Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists. I'm Will, and today we're talking The Legend of Vox Machina, episode 10. Gonna be going through all the Easter eggs and little details that you may have missed. Now that being said, spoiler warning. I've seen all of campaign 1, so stuff I point out may spoil. I mean, if you're watching this, I'm assuming you've probably finished season 1, but still wanted to throw that out there. Other than that, wanted to thank everybody that came to the watch party for these final episodes. It was great to get to experience that together, and I can't wait for season 2, where we'll definitely be doing more of that. Other than that's all I got. So thanks for coming to the video. As always, thank you for the support, and let's dive into this. Alrighty, first and foremost, I wanted to jump on something back from episode 8 that I missed. Now, Servan Castillo, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, has popped up a few times in the comments of the videos. He actually worked on the Legend of Vox Machina, so I just, first of all, thought that was amazing. Second of all, if you're watching this, incredible work. But he pointed out to me that this character here that Delilah sacrifices is actually based on Luke Ashworth, who was an assistant character designer for the show. So I just thought that was awesome. And again, thanks for pointing these little Easter eggs out that I missed, man. So cool. Next up, we've got this shot of Anna Ripley in the little flashback at the beginning of the episode where she is torturing Percy. And the way this shot is framed with her holding this hook, it almost looks like she has a hook for a hand, which is kind of just some nice foreshadowing for the fact that she will be losing a hand. So just thought this was a cool detail. All right, next up we have Pike doing her best to see if she can figure out what's going on with Percy. And this was a moment lifted straight out of the campaign. Ashley actually casts Greater Restoration to see if that'll do anything. And, well, I'll just let the clip speak for itself now.
Okay.
So what are you casting? Lesser or Greater Restoration?
I'll do greater. Do you
Okay.
mind, Percy? Or
No.
is this...
No.
Okay, so as Pike reaches up, you kind of grab his face again and you close your eyes and concentrate. Her hands begin to glow with an extremely bright vibrance, even more so than her kind of gently luminescent form right now. It's almost like there's a blowtorch of radiant energy right around his jaw. The rest of her form almost seems to put so much energy into it that her legs begin to dissipate and vanish, almost like she's putting all of her energy into this moment. The rest of her body kind of fading in towards the grasp. You feel this warmth kind of wash through your entire body, and for a brief moment, for the first time in a number of weeks, there's a moment of serenity to you. Your eyes instinctually close, and for a second you feel like you're standing next to Pike in a void of darkness. As that warmth hits Pike, you sense something there. You sense a seed of darkness. There's something in him that you can almost reach out and grasp, and in that imaginative space you thrust your hand out and grab onto it, and it's taut and it's fighting, but you pull and wrest it forth, and as you do, you feel it burn and dissipate. At which point, both of you guys open your eyes and kind of breathe in succession with each other. The energy fades from your hands and your form goes back to its full radiant physicality. You can remove a corruption point from yourself.
So yeah, not too much more to say on this scene, but I just love that they lifted this from the campaign and included it, because it's not like this was like an iconic one-liner or a big boss battle or something. It was a more subtle, quiet moment, but they still, took the time to include it. So big fan, if that wasn't clear. And the corruption point system, I'm sure some of you maybe were perking up at that. I don't believe Matt or Taliesin ever fully explained what that was, but it had something to do with like spending time in Whitestone itself, which obviously is under the influence of Delilah and this undead evil energy, but also, of course, Orthax and Percy's relationship with that. Next up, we've got this quick moment with Percy and Anna, and something that just stuck out to me here was this voice line.
It was a simple transaction. They needed an engineer, I needed a patron.
Which, I don't want to get too spoilery, but if you saw campaign 1, you may agree with me that this is perhaps a little nod to something in the future. We'll leave it at that. Next up, we have Percy going through Ripley's belongings, and we see this gun, or at least most of one. Presumably, this is probably what took Anna Ripley's arm from her when she tried to recreate Percy's gun, and it exploded. This also happened in the campaign, and Percy took the gun, just like he does here, and he ends up using it from time to time, and he actually names it Retort. And, we might see more from this gun later. Next up, we've got this awesome moment where Percy drops "You're the luckiest person in Whitestone because you're at the bottom of my list." And this is one of those lifted straight out of the campaign moments, so enjoy.
You are, at the moment, the luckiest person in Whitestone. Do you know why? So you're at the bottom of my list. And I take off the hat.
Alrighty, y'all. Next, we have another episode of Who's That Pokemon, except this time it's Who's That NPC. And here, I could spot those sideburns anywhere. This Whitestone Rebellioner next to Keeper Yin in here has to be a depiction of Ivan Van Norman. Now, if you're not familiar with him, he's been involved with Critical Role in some form or fashion for a very long time. He was part of Geek and Sundry back in the day, and that's where Critical Role, first originated on Twitch via Felicia Day. But he migrated with them when they branched out and created their own company, and I believe he's currently the head of Critical Role's Darrington Press, which is like their little part of the company that does all their board games and stuff like that. So I'll throw up his picture and you tell me, but I feel like you don't put those sideburns there by accident. But while we're on the subject here, oh gosh, the Matt NPC, you guys. I went through frame by frame of this whole scene because we have a lot of commoners here and I couldn't find him. I went through this whole episode a couple times looking for this Matt NPC. And I couldn't really find him. I have a couple of like super reaches for who he may be, and so we might as well talk about this right now. And so there's two options. And okay, first and foremost, we have this guard, which I think it was episode 7, the Scanbo episode. I felt like the Matt NPC was the Dungeon Master guard because we couldn't find the NPC that like literally looked like Matt. And this guard was wearing full armor and was literally being a dungeon master. So we said, I think this is him. And I still feel good about that. But here's where I don't feel good, because I'm guessing that maybe this guard is that same dungeon master guard. So therefore, maybe this is the Matt NPC. Now, I know that is like the biggest reach of all time, but desperate times call for desperate measures. So that's guess number 1. So, maybe, right? Maybe. I don't think they would be that cruel, but maybe. The only other guess I have, though, is this undead. So I'm skipping ahead in the episode a little bit here. But this undead in the Whitestone tombs. Now, I mean, he kind of looks like Shakespeare, but I have no other options here. The goatee mustache is not Matt's typical facial hair, but we got to remember that this is an undead. So, perhaps the other facial hair has just fallen off. But as far as his actual hair, I mean, it's pretty close to the Matt NPCs. So this is all I got. If anyone else spied something elsewhere in the episode, please let me know, because I was going crazy trying to make something work for this. And I'm sure that's clear for how much I'm grasping at straws here. But, oh God. All right, this isn't an Easter egg or anything, but I just love the inclusion here because traps, especially trapped hallways, are just peak D&D. Very Indiana Jones, but very D&D, and I love it. And actually, there were literally traps at this moment in the campaign of them, approaching the ziggurat, but it didn't really play out like this. But nonetheless, at the risk of rambling too much, I loved this scene, so I wanted to include it. All right, here we have Vex ribbing Vax, kind of being like, I told you so, she has thorns, and basically just being glad that this relationship didn't work out. And the great little detail here is that Keyleth is framed between Vex and Vax, exactly what Vex was afraid of, that this half-elven druid would come between them. All right, we got a little twofer here. First and foremost, the Sun Tree roots. And it's just not this scene, but I decided to since it's prominently featured here, I decided to use this to explain this as well. If you haven't noticed, all throughout these tunnels, the catacombs leading up to the ziggurat, there are the roots of the Sun Tree everywhere. And I just think that's, great foreshadowing of kind of what's to come later in the climactic battle. Between, the Briarwoods and the party. So that wasn't just, something that they wrote in at the last second, you know what I mean? They were building towards that. The Sun Tree's roots go deep. But other than that, all right, put on your reaching goggles, because here we go. It's another episode of Who's That Pokemon. and I think this might be a little Brian W. Foster edition. Now, I don't know. When I first saw it, that just instantly jumped into my mind. So I'm like, intentional or am I weird? And, nobody answered that. But I think that goatee mustache combo is very reminiscent of a few of his styles from time to time. Now, I couldn't find a picture that I felt like really, really exemplified this because I feel like he's had this exact look at some point. But again, I couldn't find the picture, so maybe he hasn't. But here's the closest one I could find. You tell me. All right, next up we have Vax's first use of his flame tongue dagger in the whole campaign. Well, okay, not his first use of it, but his first use of its fire as a light capability, which I think we've talked about Vax's different daggers at various points in these videos, but the flame tongue dagger was so named because it could do just this. So it was cool to see it actually in action. Alrighty, then in this zombie battle scene, I already told you I went through frame by frame trying to find Matt. We'll touch on that again briefly here, I suppose. But there's a few of these that kind of evoked things for me. Now, this may be super reaches, it may be intended. Again, you tell me. But first, going from left to right here, I got Corpse Bride, Tim Burton's Corpse Bride vibes here. Then in the middle, very like Marie Antoinette. It also gave me Marisha vibes. Not like as in this looks like Marisha, but for some reason I feel like Marisha wore a costume one time that was like this, except not undead. But I could not find that online anywhere. So I don't know why that thought popped in my mind. But figured I'd share it here in case anyone else happen to feel the same way and maybe know why we were thinking that. And then finally, the Matt Mercer potential NPC, but also William Shakespeare. So, yeah, I don't know. You guys let me know. All right, next up, we have a classic thanks, Keyleth moment. Where Grog and Scanlan are basically like, yeah, dumb plan. And this is definitely a nod to the fact that many times throughout campaign 1, Keyleth was, unsure of herself and maybe would do things without thinking about them or, make a mistake here and there. And that's not what happens in this scene, but just those things led to Keyleth getting a lot of unfair criticisms throughout campaign 1. So like the thanks Keyleth kind of became a thing, kind of like thanks Obama. So I just love that, they're kind of poking fun at that in the show and really jokes on everyone else because Keyleth is one of the fan favorites of this show. And I'm so happy for Marisha. And again, I think it's great that she can kind of poke fun at those harsh critics now. All right, next up, we get this iconic moment of Cassandra's name appearing on the gun barrel. I spoke briefly about this when we were talking about the shadow Easter egg from a couple episodes prior, but I didn't want to say anything more because I didn't know how the show was going to go with it. I'm so glad they stuck true to the source material here and had this still happen and kind of had Cass's betrayal. So not much of an Easter egg to point out in this scene or anything, but I just wanted to preface the fact that I'm about to play that clip from the actual campaign. So enjoy.
As you're on your way there, Percy, you notice a flash of purple and black energy kind of curse up the front of your pepper box. You glance down at the 6 o'clock previously empty barrel, and a new name now is emblazoned across it. It says Cassandra Derola.
Oh my god.
Wait, that was on that empty barrel?
What?
Oh my god. I thought he didn't know who it was for. Oh my god.
Does any of us
That synchronized sip from Matt and Taliesin, though, at the end of that last clip. Check it out if you didn't notice. I feel like that was a knowing sip. But anyway, next up we have this whole acid trap scene. And this was something that was lifted straight out of the campaign as well. It didn't play out the same. There were actually a couple of drastic's not the right word because I mean they were trapped in a room filling with acid, so I mean the whole bones of everything were the same, but the details were pretty different in how all these things played out. And I'm not going to show a clip of that from the original campaign because it was really long in order to show that full encounter. But all this to say is that I really liked the changes they made. I think the changes made sense for making it an animated show, and the main details stayed the same. But what I wanted to point out here was the fact that when Scanlan is, shredding heavy to raise people up on his Scanlan's hand, he's gotta shred harder, and so I just love the added detail that they have the smaller hand start to play the guitar and help him, play more fiercely. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with D&D, this is not the same spell that he's using to hold them up. Again, that is called Scanlan's hand in the show, Bigby's hand in D&D. The smaller hand is a depiction of the cantrip mage hand, where a few different classes in D&D can cast this, and you basically create a little arcane hand like that can carry something for you, try to pick a lock, can do basically whatever your imagination can come up with. And so just so creative and clever here to cast Mage Hand to help him shred on his lute. Loved this. Alright, y'all, that's going to do it for episode 10 of The Legend of Vox Machina. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what I missed. Let me know how you feel about my Matt NPC reaching. I really don't know what to think. Part of me is like, maybe they just didn't put Mercer in every episode, and a few of these ones we've been kind of reaching on were maybe never intended, and they just put them in a few. So let me know your thoughts on that. Sorry for the delay on getting these out. Hopefully episode 11 and 12 will be out over the next couple of days, and as always, just thanks for tuning in. Till next time.